You're listening to Jim Eschenbacher, pastor of the branch, as he shares a message entitled Touch Jesus from October 2nd, 2016. For more messages, please check out our Facebook page or visit us at our YouTube channel, The Branch, Oregon.
As I talked last week, we do a lot of through the Bible type studies, and then this week I'm doing a topical, and it's something I really am passionate about and really love. It's a story from the Gospels. So I'm going to read it, and then we'll get into the Word. So if you don't have notes, they're back there. And let's turn to Mark chapter 5, and we'll start in verse 21. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was beside the sea. Then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name. Seeing him, he fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be healed." And he went with him. And a great crowd followed them and thronged him. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, if I even touch his garment, I'll be made whole. And immediately the flow of blood dried up. And she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out, said, "Who touched my garment?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Beautiful story, power of Jesus. This is not a parable, by the way. You know, a lot of times we read parables in the Gospels where Jesus tells a story. This actually happened. This is a real event. The crowd was not just following him at a distance, they thronged him. They were crowded against him and around him, in front of him, behind him, probably mostly behind him, but they were crowding him. Jesus often drew a crowd. Did you notice that in the Bible? I'm going to read a couple of them. Mark 3. You can follow with me. I think you have these in your notes. I probably didn't write anything out, but I think they're in your notes, the addresses. Mark 3, verse 7. Let's read what that says. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, and a great crowd followed him from Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem and Idumeas, and from beyond the Jordan, from around Tyre and Sidon. I'll read a few more verses just so we get context here. When the great crowd heard all that he was doing, they came to him, and he told his disciples to have a boat ready for him because of the crowd, lest they crush him. For he had healed many, so that all who had disease pressed around him to touch him. And wherever the unclean spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." And he strictly ordered them not to make him known. So you can see that there's another episode, another moment in his life where a crowd gathered. He wasn't always impressed with crowds. Turn to John chapter 6. And we're going to read from verse 24, a few verses. So when the crowd saw that Jesus was not there, nor his disciples, they themselves got into the boats and went to Capernaum, seeking Jesus. When they found him at the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you come here?" And Jesus answered them, "Truly I say to you, you are seeking me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves." He's talking about when he fed the 5,000. Because I fed you, you're hanging around. So he wasn't just automatically impressed by big crowds. And then a little later in that same chapter, verse 50, he seemingly sends them away. Notice this. When many of his disciples heard it, they said, "This is a hard saying. Who can listen to it?" But Jesus, knowing in himself that his disciples were grumbling about this, said to him, Do you take offense at this? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending up where he was before? A lot of the crowd dispersed that day. They no longer wanted to listen to him. He's talking about eating his flesh and drinking his blood, and they're going, We thought he was wacko. My uncle said he was wacko. He's wacko. They just didn't know what to do with it, and they didn't like it. Now, in our relationship with God, there's no safety in crowds. Crowd dynamics can be deceptive. Crowds can be about the crowd instead of the reason for the crowd. If you've ever been in a crowd, you understand what I'm saying, or what I'm thinking of here. There's a sense of belonging to something bigger than self. There must be something important going on here. I don't know what it is. I don't care. There's a crowd. I want to be a part of that. In 1980, was anybody alive in 1980? Sorry, I can't raise that hand. I'm sorry. A pastor by the name of John Jimenez from Virginia Beach, Virginia, got a word from the Lord to gather the country in Washington, D.C. to pray for the country, to gather the church in Washington, D.C. to pray for the country. I signed up early. I wanted to be a part of this and that crowd. And so they made me the go-to guy for Washington State. What that meant was I had to coordinate all the travel and lodging for everybody that went from Washington State. And I lived in Spokane, but most of the people came from Seattle or Tacoma. Some came from Spokane. So I was coordinating all this stuff, and we didn't have internet or cell phones in those days. So I was sitting at a dial phone talking to people in other parts of the state and saying, all right, so you need to leave what time and how many people do you have? And I coordinated their travel and figured out how they were going to get from the airport to the lodging, and I put together the lodging for everybody from Washington. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying this was how busy I was, and this is how important it was to me, and I was really committed. Well, we got there, and we all got there safely, and it was on April 29th, 1980, the first Washington for Jesus rally. Now, that has since been changed to America for Jesus, and that's continuing on in various forms. But the first one was really something. 600,000 people gathered on that mall. Have any of you been to the, you recognize that, don't you, Jeremy? Have any of you ever been to the mall out in front of the Capitol building in Washington? It's just a long grassy area with the monuments, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Washington monuments. And so you're just sitting on grass. Well, we got there, and I had borrowed, I think was the real word, a bus from a church, and I was transporting everybody from our lodging area to this event. We got there, parked the bus, walked in. Where we ended up sitting, we couldn't even see the stage. We didn't even see the people that were speaking or praying. We were sitting in an area so far away. Now, they had put up screens, so we watched these people on screens. And I had signed up for the choir, so for a little while when the choir was singing, I was on the platform and I got to see some of the, what we call them, big shots. Some of these guys walk up and speak on the microphone and pray into the microphone. But for the most part, we weren't a part of anything. We were just sitting in a crowd on the grass. Now, I was excited because I wanted to be a part of the crowd. I wanted to be a part of this thing. It was a really big deal. We were praying for our nation in 1980. And does anybody remember who got elected in 1980? Yeah, Ronald Reagan. So we felt like we'd succeeded because Ronald Reagan sort of represented a Christian ethic. Well, one thing you learn about anything human, there's no automatic that it's going to last very long. Look around. And we now realize, probably should have kept praying. But anyway, that was the moment. I wanted to be a part of that big event. And so I was. So what? I never even saw my picture show up on any of the promo stuff. I hoped that the crowd would impact God. That he would see this crowd and go, oh, they're serious. And I'm not opposed to what we did. It was in response to that verse, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, then will I hear from heaven and I will heal their land. That was our prayer. That's the reason the whole thing started. And Pastor Jimenez had that vision, and he coordinated this thing and put it together. But the crowd was not the big deal. What we really need, what you and I need, what everybody need, what we needed then is Jesus in our hearts and in our lives. We didn't need to prove anything by being a part of a big crowd. But at the same time, I was impressed with the crowd. And I thought it was an important event, and I wanted to be a part of that important event. I wanted to be there. So you understand, don't you? I mean, you get this. It's like we go to football games to, you can see them better on TV, but we go to games because you want to be a part of that crowd, the noise, and all that kind of stuff. Now, in the story we're reading today, I imagine that it's possible that in the crowd there could have been some conversations similar to this. Some guy walks up and goes, "What are we doing here?" "We're listening to Jesus." "Can you hear him?" "No. But if he decides to feed us, he's going to have us all sit down, and I'm looking forward to that." Now, those of you who are good Bible scholars know that hasn't happened yet in Mark 5. So you can fill in the blanks if you want to, or tell me I can't do that ever again. Do you think he can feed all of us? I think so. And he heals people. It's really cool. Who is this Jesus? Sounds kind of neat. I don't know, but he is exciting. Some say he's the Messiah. What do you think? I don't know. But this is a big event, so I want to be here. Hey, lady, where do you think you're going? I was standing here. I need to get to Jesus. I need to touch him. Well, good luck with that. This is as close as you're getting today. Crowds aren't always helpful in trying to get to Jesus. Some people go to church for the same reason they start a workout regimen. Sounds like a good idea. People stand in the crowd hoping that joining the crowd is enough to take care of their fitness needs, their spiritual fitness needs. Do we have a relationship with Jesus or just some ideas about him? Do you have a relationship with Jesus, or are you just infatuated with some of his goodness? He said, Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly of heart." Come to me. Don't just come to my ideas. Come to me. That's really important. Today he is calling to each one of us. Don't be content to be counted among those in the crowd. Come to me, he says. The woman in the story came to Jesus for healing. That was her reason. But let me ask you, today I feel like I could use that touch, but not every day is the same. So let me ask you, do you not need some healing in your life as well? I mean, not just physical. We all need some healing. We all need the touch of Jesus in our lives. Are you going to settle for being in the crowd that somebody up front is hearing Jesus, or are you going to touch him? That's the question for today. Imagine the effort it took for this sick, anemic woman to push through a crowd. She knew that she had to touch his garment. That was it. She had faith for that. Faith is important in this. Many people touched Jesus that day. Picture it. They're crowded around. They're thronging him. And the disciples asked, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and you say, 'Who touched me?' What's wrong with you, Jesus?" kind of thing. It's one thing to get pushed into Jesus. It's another thing to push yourself to him. Jesus singled out the one who touched him by faith. That's who we need to be, those who come to him in faith. Faith changes us. We believe in God. Jesus said, "Your faith has made you well." Why did he say that? Was it something she said? When she came to Jesus for her healing, it says in the story she touched the hem of his garment. She didn't say anything. She just touched him. And he turned around and, "Who touched me?" Jesus knew, however, what it took for her to get to him. She knew all the obstacles that she had to press through before the crowd and in the crowd. She knew what she was going through. He knew what she went through. He saw her faith in action. Remember, James said, faith without works is dead. He saw her faith in action. Got her out of her chair and she pushed through. Only faith will help us through these obstacles. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Do you think it pleases God when you come to him? How many times in the Bible are we encouraged along those lines? Call unto me. And Jesus says, "Come to me, all ye." Here are some obstacles. Think about these that you kind of push through by faith. Your past. It calls you back to the way you were. It calls you back to some of the things you enjoyed. The world. "Look what I can give you," says the world. Your reasoning and common sense. Imagine what went through that woman's mind as she planned her approach to Jesus. What will others think? What if he ignores me? What will my brothers say? What if I haven't the strength? Common sense could have stopped her right there. Finally, the day arrives and she starts her approach, but guess what? He's surrounded by a huge crowd. I'm talking about being alone with him. She's not going to get that. But she didn't quit. The crowd presented a diversion. Perhaps if I just stay in the crowd, everything will work out. Plus, the crowd is people telling you what they think. And they might even tell you how foolish your pursuit is, like the little story that I just read. Stay here, they plead. Join us. Now, I was working on this week, and on Thursday, I get the word of the day from Ducky. Does anybody get that word? Like, I know a bunch of you do. And it's here. I want to read from it. In Mark chapter 5, there was a woman who had been sick for 12 years. The doctors gave her no hope. But she heard that Jesus was passing through her town. Something deep down on the inside was saying, this is your season. This is your time to get well. In the natural, when she saw all the people around Jesus, she might have thought, I'll never get to him. It's so crowded. And I'm weak. She could have missed her season. But instead of dwelling on those negative thoughts, instead of looking at her situation, she started reminding herself, if I can just get to Jesus, I will be healed. I'll be whole. She made the choice to turn her thoughts in the right direction and was empowered to take a leap of faith. She pressed through the crowd until she got close enough to touch the edge of his garment. Instantly, she was made whole. That's the story right there. She could have sat on her couch at home and said, I know Jesus heals. He can heal me. Jesus can heal me. I believe in Jesus. He can heal me. I'm going to run up and touch my television. He can heal me. I'm not trying not to say anything against those practices. I'm just saying this woman went out of her way, put herself in harm's way even, to get to Jesus. I am going to get to him. I've got to. I have to. And I pray that at the end of today that's each one of our passion, that we're not content to just be in the crowd and say, well, this crowd loves Jesus. I'm glad to be in this crowd. But you, each individual here, wants to touch Jesus. Faith got that woman off her couch, had her start walking. Faith produces action in you, in us. The walk of faith, the faith walk, the reason I bring this up, is not a cakewalk. Don't confuse those two words. They sound similar, but they're not. The faith walk is not a cakewalk. I walk by faith. It's more than a song. It's a way of life. It's a discipline, a daily discipline. I am walking by faith. My prayer for this church is that each individual touches Jesus by faith and receives whatever he wants to give you, whatever he sees your need is. Don't be distracted. Don't settle for close enough. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He didn't say, except near me. He said, except through me. Don't settle for close. We want to get with Jesus. Knowing about Jesus is not the goal of a Christian life. Knowing Jesus is the goal of our Christian life. Huge difference there. Now, I didn't say that you don't want to know about him. You do. But that's not the goal. Knowing about him turns you to him and you want to know him, and you want to be known by him. At the end of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 7:23, he says, "Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness." Now, he was talking to people who knew about Jesus. In fact, their defense of themselves was, "Didn't we do all these wonderful things in your name?" Then, even though they even thought they worked in the power of his name. And he said, in essence, that's not what it takes. You must know me. I must know you intimately. Must have relationship with one another. Don't be content to just read or hear about Jesus. Touch him. Know him. And you're saying, how's it possible, Jim? He's in heaven. How can we touch him? I don't know. I don't have the fancy answer to that, but you know. You know what it's like to come to Jesus and just, as Mary did, just sit at his feet and say, "I'm listening, Lord. I'm here. Want to be with you." And I'm not putting the branch down, but don't be in a group thinking, if I'm just in the right group, I'm going to be okay. It's not how it works. And make the greatest act of faith in your life, guess what? Not to get your Aunt Susie healed, not to get cancer wiped off the face of the earth. The greatest act of your faith, make that to know him. Whatever that takes. Push through. I have faith. I want to know Jesus. I have faith that that's what he is willing to do, and that's what God does, and I want that. I want that. Let that be your prayer of faith. Jesus, I want to know you. And to get to know Jesus, you're going to have to walk around some mountains, or you're going to have to throw them in the sea. See what he allows you to do. You're going to have to cross some rivers or some lakes, some bodies of water, some seas. You're going to have to press through the crowd. Don't be complacent or lukewarm. If the people around you are saying, "You're good, you're a good guy, you're a good girl. You don't need any more than what you're doing and what you got." Just say, "No, I have got to touch him. I have to. Step aside. I have to." Don't be distracted by the common or the complacency of where I was in that crowd. Like I said, I never saw the speakers. I sat on the grass and ate fried chicken or whatever, and we were fasting. I didn't eat fried chicken. I prayed. I made that up, obviously. We were supposed to be fasting. I think we were. But we prayed quietly in support of everything going on. Prayed for our nation. And I believe that some things did happen in our nation because of that gathering. But it wasn't because it was a crowd. It was because in that crowd there were some people there by faith. I was there filled with faith. I was interested in the crowd. I was impressed by the fact that there were so many people. But that was way too much to do just for that reason. Faith drove me there. And I thought, all right, if we gather and pray for our nation, God will hear our prayer. And the nation got better. And the church went through some stuff. That was shortly after that Jim Baker was found guilty of embezzlement or whatever he was doing, and he got sent to prison. And that was what was the name of his show? PTL, Praise the Lord. That was one of the biggest Christian shows on TV, and it got wiped out. Because, as I said, God isn't into big. He's into real, intimate. Who knows that you have something in your life that could use some healing? I pretty aware of it today because of my ribs and my hips, but that's physical. I'm also aware of some spiritual deficiencies and some areas that I'm weak in that I need the Lord I need Him, period. In fact, when I was trying to get out of bed this morning, my pain was so much I couldn't get out of bed. I laid there and I thought, this is not going to work. Do I call the church and say, I'm sorry, I won't be there? Oh, who's the church? Every one of you? What do? I didn't know what to do. I could call me and say I'm not going to be there. Call the pastor. But I finally got up. Well, Carla helped me get up. She sort of literally picked me up and sat me on the side of the bed, and then I stood up and got out. But there were times when I was laying there thinking, I'm not going to be able to get up. I don't know what to do. I was saying, Lord, if you don't touch me, this can't happen. I won't preach today. This message won't go. I need your touch. I really do. And I wish I could tell you that I felt this big, warm ball of fire come roaring into me and raise me right up out of bed. A little ball of fire over there, but it wasn't a big, warm ball of fire. It's my wife. She picked me up. First, she tried to pull me out of bed, and that hurt. So I said, no, we can't do that. And so then she got behind me and pushed me out. Okay. God met me there. I know. And we're getting through this message on time, I think, because I know God has walked us to here. So this is important, and I leave you with this. Touch Him. Whatever that means in your thoughts, in your heart, in your mind, touch Him. And we're going to start with an old hymn, because we do that for Barb. But